Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Promoters of Vision 2020 had envisioned that Nigerians would celebrate the country's achievement of becoming one of the 20 best economies in the world in 2020. This was topmost among the goals of the Grand National Development Plan that grabbed public imagination when it was launched 11 years ago by former President Olusegun Obasanjo in 2006. Rather, what Nigeria is saddled with now is high rates of unemployment, debt servicing at 60%, and Chinese loans that portends to give away our sovereignty.
Well, joining us now from our Abuja studios to speak on various reforms being put in place to salvage Nigeria's economy is the coordinator of Nigeria's successive plans to Vision 2020, the 2021 to 2025 Medium-Term National Development Plan, and Agenda 2050, Professor Ken Ife. Welcome to the morning show. So I want us to start with the problem. They say a problem known is a problem half solved. So promoters of Vision 2020 had envisaged that this year Nigeria would become one of the 20 best economies in the world. Well, here we are now, and it seems that the long-term plan did not make a dent on the nation's developmental changes, as many Nigerian citizens are in worse socioeconomic conditions than ever before. We have an estimated 86.9 million people said to be living on less than $1 a day. So how did we get here?
I don't actually agree with you that it's, the analysis, many part of the analysis. But what I would say is this. In the December 2014, Nigeria GDP rose to $575 billion, and we were number 21. So, for all intents and purposes, we were almost there. But then, of course, just a few months afterwards, the oil problem came, and we had more than 60% cut in our revenue from oil. So all that problem started then. It's not that we didn't try, but even as we are today, we fall short. Yes, our GDP is just around $450 billion, but it's still climbing, gradually building up. Now we've entered into another crisis that is setting us back. So the visions are there, the dreams are there to be dreamed, but what you can't control are the global phenomenon. Either climate or disease or whatever, oil pressures.
Okay, very well said. Well, you are the coordinator of Nigeria's successive plans, Vision 2020 to 2021, right? Medium-Term National Development Plan and Agenda 2050, correct?
That's correct.
All right.
That's correct.
So now,
yeah, in that particular case, there are two things. There are two things we are doing in both cases.
Okay.
One, the medium-term development framework is a successor to the ERGP, that's the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, which was 2017 to 2020. So that is a successor to that one. And then the Agenda 2050 is a successor to Vision 2020, which takes things a much longer horizon. But I must say that we also had tremendous challenges in delivering our targets on the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan. Because if you look at all the projections, in terms of GDP, we are looking at more around $550 billion, but we're just about $100 billion away from that. In terms of the output, growth in our output, we were looking at 7%, but we're about 1.9, and it might go down because of
specific terms.
And
can you share with us what
those
challenges are in specific terms? Because, I'd also like to know what will guarantee that this new plan will work, given that, the Vision 2020 is ending this year, and, it was formulated really after the country failed to achieve the targets of the 2010 plan.
Well, it's not. It has to come in because these ones are ending by 2020. The thing is, the plans are there to be made. I have no doubt that we would do our best to meet those targets, but they're outside your control. The events that are causing the meltdown are completely outside our control. Nobody has found a cure for COVID-19. You can't stop the oil politics from is all over our head. The prices are not determined by us. If you look at the medium-term framework from 2021 to 2023, the 3-year medium-term expenditure framework, the assumptions are moderated. We reduced the oil price benchmark to $28. Look at where it came down from over $50 down to $28. We've also reduced the production volume to 1.8 from 2.1 to 1.8. As at yesterday, I think we are probably doing about 1.3 million barrels per day. It's outside our control. It's what OPEC says that we have to do. We try to comply. So much of those, the prices, the fluctuations on foreign exchange is predicated on the lower level of revenue coming in from Forex. So you can see how all of those are much outside our control. The inflation rate, we're doing our best to control that, but there's a lot going on food because the food sub-index is what gives a 3% drag on the inflation figure. Much of it is to do with the conflict that we have. Much of it is to do with endemic problems in the food supply systems. But the country is trying. But it is no means an easy task. Extremely difficult task that we're facing very challenging times right now.
Yes, we are indeed. But let's speak to the rationale behind the major target of the vision, which was propelling Nigeria into the league of the 20 best economies. So this translates to us having a GDP of about 900 billion US dollars this year compared to 212 billion in 2008. So how is that achievable in a nation that has one of Africa's highest unemployment rates? We're talking about 23% of its population, 18 million people currently without jobs. Shouldn't the focus be meeting the basic needs of Nigerians instead of hinging our development plans on GDP figures that don't impact on the current realities on ground?
Well, you can say that, but I may not agree with you. The thing is that you can't stand still. The economy has to grow. So why everybody is concerned about reducing the level of poverty? But you have to grow the economy. And you can't grow the economy without growing the infrastructure. It is only when you grow the infrastructure that investors are interested in coming into your economy and investing. And it's only when domestic and foreign investors invest that you create wealth and then you employ people. You don't employ people by getting them and putting them off the dole and then start giving them cash. You don't run an economy like that. You don't grow the economy like that. So big challenge is trying to get investment. Big challenge is having to borrow. We have to borrow because we don't have savings. If we have savings, which we are trying to build up now, you could say that pension fund is about over 10 trillion. We are building a lot of resilience in the system by encouraging national savings schemes, which we know by 2030 could bring us as much as $40 billion naira. So we're making all that effort, but it is not an easy task. It is not by any means an easy task. I understand what you're saying. Nobody is comfortable with over 41% of your population being in abject poverty, and then it is rising. Very, very discomforting times. But I can tell you this. When you look at the figures in terms of what is coming into the economy, we had a meeting in March where the private sector said, okay, we are going to float an infrastructure company. We need capitalization of 15 trillion naira. And they're looking at government to give $2 billion in foreign guarantee. And that will simply take away from government those key 26 projects, infrastructure projects, and then take care of that. Excellent move. If we do that, it will solve half of the problems that we are having because it will allow government liquidity. Government can afford, and we will have less resource to borrowing, external borrowing. Yes. So these are some of the things on the pipeline, and then we also have other visions and of things that could be done. Bringing technology to drive the entire industrial space and all of that economic activity. And we have known for all the time that Nigeria and other countries, the big difference between Nigeria and other developing countries is just the role of technology. Yes. And we are putting more emphasis in technology. Our technology has been growing.
I'd love to take you on the point that you made about borrowing. I know it is very important to borrow, and we're not against borrowing in Nigeria, but Nigeria's relationship with China has come under increased public scrutiny with the revelations about the loans that we borrowed from China. And the conditions in the loans would allegedly, they say, give away our sovereignty. I'd love to take you on that point with the Chinese loans.
Well, I agree with you, and I'm concerned about it, terribly concerned about it. What my advice to government is to break down the contracts. Because if you go for this $10 billion contract, $15 billion contract, only Chinese companies will be involved, and they're all backed by their government. And so you don't have fair play. You don't have competitive tendering in that respect, and they can collude to impose a very high price. I have experienced that when we bidded for Port Harcourt to Maiduguri rail line. Break it down so that other countries can come in and play, and then you have a fair price. Secondly, let's have projects that are sustainable and are viable. Because if they can pay back, then there's no issue. But the fact of the matter is that level of diligence, you don't find it in bilateral loans. But if you are borrowing from, and also their cost is high. When you have about 5% interest, is very, very high. If they're not giving us concessionary rates right now. China Exim are not giving us concessionary rate because of legacy issues, and you all know that. But with multilateral development banks like ADB and World Bank, there's diligence, there's due diligence, and they make sure that they will not let you come in with frivolous projects and then endanger the money invested in them by a member state, regional member states. So that's why they take.
Okay, Mr. Kennifer, I'd like to come in here. I'm sorry to cut you short, but we need to go on a quick break. When we come back, we will continue this conversation and begin to talk solutions. Join us again. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Now, before the break, we were talking about the relationship between Nigeria and China, especially when it comes to loans. You were answering Oji's question. But as you land on that point, I want you to also think about the history of Chinese loans, especially in Africa, becoming a growing concern. There's been a call for the need to review and renegotiate existing China-Nigeria loan agreements in the midst of global concerns. It's been described as a Chinese debt trap diplomacy, where this Asian nation allegedly uses finance as a weapon in many developing countries. Are we at risk?
Well, very much so, and I do agree with you on that. The thing is, let's not put the cart before the horse. Before the MDAs embark on contracting with the Chinese, let the Office of the Attorney General get involved, and don't bring contracts to them when it has already been at the point of closure. Let the National Assembly that have their own role to play to get involved so that they can ask the difficult questions. And don't make it, a do or die affair. At the moment, it is becoming a do or die affair. And we cannot afford to risk our sovereignty with clauses that actually amount to waiver of sovereign immunity. And we shouldn't allow that. And we have options. You don't act with desperation. We have options. We've seen the multilateral development banks give us between 0 and 2% interest, and not floating rates that you find in some of the bilaterals. And if you start floating at around 4 to 5%, where are you going to get to? By the time our children come in, the rate would have gone up to 7, 8%. So that's the thing. We need to have more due diligence on the contracting process involving these people. And I say begin it by breaking down the contract sizes. Don't go for all these 10 billion. At those high volumes, other countries crash out. It's only Chinese companies that are playing on those. And then you see them a 2,000 kilometer or 2,500 kilometer of rail, which could cost about 5 billion. You find them colluding and getting prices over 12 billion dollars. So you have to break this down so that it becomes a much more competitive affair, and then ensure that the right authorities, the Attorney General's office, and these people are involved at the outset, and don't put us in a straitjacket. I think that's how I see that. There are other options, and we should exercise all other options. First of all, there are so many PPPs that are rolling out. The government wants to get rid of, commercialize and privatize many of the utilities. Yeah, they can come and take some of these utilities and work them up, and then build it. And then also we have free trade zones where you could get in and do some businesses and produce for a re-export. So in that way, you're actually working with us rather than expose us to long-term hazard, as I can see in Zambia. I think Kaunda's International Airport is up for grabs now, and there are other seaports that are complaining of potential takeover. So I don't think Nigeria wants to experience this, to be honest with you.
Well, you are talking about other options. You know, in the Vision 2020 goal that was set, there were options about privatization of different agencies. And as we speak now, most of them are still government-owned. Now, we're talking about, I know that electricity has been privatized, but every other thing, road, is all government-owned. So how is this going to be different? I mean, it's been years of these plans that have been put in place and nothing has been changed.
Well, this is the way to go. Privatization is the way to go, and commercialization, both are ways to go. But then you have to deliver them in the context of a robust infrastructure plan, a very good framework. And we have a robust institution there, the ICRC. And then, of course, you have the BPE. But the thing is that we have to up our game to ensure that we have a wider field of interest and bring speed to bear on the process to get all these, because they represent a sink on our resources. So I agree with you. That's the way to go. We need to speed that up. But then also, we need to attract some of these bilaterals, get them into this area, because that is where we have a lot of weaknesses. Look at what's going on with our steel industry. For how many years? Yes. Almost $8 billion. And then you see, of course, you know what is going on with the power. But I'm glad that Siemens has come in, and we now have an end-to-end intervention in the power sector. Something that also required to unbundle the legal framework before you could get to this stage. But it's all work in progress. But I agree with you that is the way to go, to get that out of government's orbit. They are not MDAs, though, they are projects.
Right.
But in the case of the MDAs, about merging some of them.
Yes. We were talking about the Chinese loans and whether or not there is any sovereignty clause. You know, the Chinese has denied that there are no sovereignty clauses in the loans. You know, some analysts are even saying, like you said, bring in people. But some analysts are saying that maybe we should even collaborate with the Chinese and have them come in to build our infrastructure. What is your take on that?
No, but that's the way to go, because I have actually made good effort to bring some of the biggest industrial businesses in China to come and invest in our free trade zones and build them for the purpose of relocating some of their industries and taking advantage of our AGOA and all that. And so it's music to their ear. But that's the kind of direction that we need to focus on, to make sure that they are coming in here to invest rather than rip us apart. And I expect them to argue their own case and say there was no immunity clauses on that trade. No. But you have to see what's going on in other countries. You go and ask Zambia what are they going through. Go and ask other countries where they are taking over their ports, and that is neither here nor there. So it is their prerogative to defend their case. We don't argue their case. We argue our own case. But I do say that from the examples that I've seen that in the National Assembly right now, although the magnitude of the money is about $400 million, but it's not much. But to get into the billions of dollars, we can't walk in there with our eyes closed. It's just not acceptable.
Definitely not. I'm still talking solutions. What other reforms, policies, development plans, programs can be put in place right now to salvage Nigeria's economy as we begin to wrap up?
Well, the government has, as I did mention before, over the last 10 years now, we've grown the pension fund to over 10 trillion naira. Now, the government is also launching national savings schemes at individual level, corporate level, public level, and all of that, including diaspora. Now, this is the kind of money mobilization that could give us over 50 trillion naira over the next 30 years. Those represent massive source of borrowing for development purposes that will reduce our appetite for external borrowing. Also, don't forget I did mention infrastructure company PLC that is hoping to start capitalized by 15 trillion naira. That again is so apt because it will now take the burden of infrastructure development away from government so that government can focus on a lot more things, social inclusion, education, health, and all of that. And then they're going to be more efficient because if you put $2 to $5 billion sovereign guarantee to them, they can roll them over. They can use that to support up to $20 billion investment. But then don't forget that this is lending in Nigerian currency. So it's the way to go. Those are the way to go to make sure that we take the pressure of government and then focus on how government works with subnational entities like the state governments in the field of agriculture, in the field of building social infrastructure. So that's the way we see things moving. And make sure that technology takes the center stage in all our development agenda. And you don't see innovation tied to just one section. Innovation is a cross-cutting theme. Economy cannot grow unless you innovate. And that is the message.
Right.
For
well, as
looking
we wrap
forward.
up, I wanted to just touch on quickly on the CBN post-pandemic plan, but I believe we don't have much time, but you've been excellent on this program, and thank you so much for joining us now.
Thank you for joining us.